and you will add a huge amount of, as one of the studies has shown that India will add close to 1.5 to 2.5 trillion to pre-tax profits for India's top 500 companies by becoming AI first. And therefore, it's also important to understand that Indian companies are lagging behind. One of the studies shows that 2/3 of Indian companies lag in AI adoption and maturity, and the top 500 countries need to train their staff in AI. And therefore, my personal view is that AI will be the most disruptive force in businesses, it will be the most disruptive force for government, it will be the most unifying force for a country to technologically leapfrog, and no country is better placed than India because we have AI needs three things basically. It needs a huge amount of data, which India has, a massive amount of data. No country has the kind of data which India has. It needs the power of algorithms, which Indian engineers are best equipped to do, and it needs computing power, which India now through the AI mission will be providing GPUs to a vast number of institutions. Now, so AI should become very critical to our growth, and that to my mind, integrating technology with human skills, ensuring access to AI and tech to your manpower will be very critical, and all of you will have to be very visionary to use both AI and cybersecurity in the years to come. The other big point is about climate change and going green, which I really think that is very important, because EU will put in duties by border taxes by 2026. So our effort will be, as I said, that India becomes the first country in the world to industrialize and urbanize by decarbonizing, and that would require all of you to focus very strongly on going green as a manufacturing process itself. India's done some very path-breaking work in this area already. My view is that this is not a challenge, this is a huge opportunity which India has to really capture. And the last point I would really make is that this is really India's decade. Because it's India's decade because of sheer demographics of young population. It's also India's decade because India's really, the government has pushed capex spend in the post-COVID era. The last 4 years, government has raised its capex spend very substantially. Today, if you look at India's GDP, the gross investment rate is about 31% of GDP. Now, 31% of GDP is okay for 6.57% rate of growth. If you want to have an accelerated growth of close to 9%, you need to raise your it's very important that the gross investment rate is raised from 31% to close to 35% in the next 2 years, and is then accelerated further to 39 to 40%. 40% was the rate in China, in Korea, and that is, investment rates must rise, and therefore investment rates can only rise on the back of private capex. There is a need for revival of private corporate investment, and that is critical to my mind. My personal view is that private capex will rise now because capacity utilization as per RBI is at a decade all-time high, and therefore if the capacity utilization is at a decade high, and if the balance sheet of the banks are good, there will be increased lending to the private sector. The government debt to GDP ratio is high in India, but the private debt to GDP ratio is very low in India. And story will unleash itself, and once it unleashes itself, the next decade, for the next 10 years, India will grow on the back of private sector. And therefore, this is India's moment. This is not merely India's decade, this is India's century, and to enable it to be an India century, it's important that all of us work together to make India a country which grows rapidly at 9 to 10% for the next 3 decades, to make India a $35 trillion economy by 2047. Thank you.
Only she is representing 50% of the population, rest are all men. Right, so we have to at CII figure out this, how do we get more women into leadership roles in CII, but of course, our topic here is not just women in leadership positions, but into boardrooms also, so that we can get that perspective into running and managing companies. Now, to promote gender balance in workplace, CII has been promoting this concept of DEI, which stands for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion at the highest level of leadership. I also want to share very briefly that early 2000 in the IT industry, IT services industry, the representation of women was about 18-19%, which is what the academic and engineering institutes especially had representation of women in those days. Sort of it mirrored that actually. But through proactive measures, the IT services industry has taken the representation of women in the industry to about 32 to 35%. So in about 20 years, significant impact was made. And so these initiatives do actually matter, do make a difference, and at CII, if we are able to do this, I think we will make a huge difference. And then the productivity improvement, because adding people to workforce, adding women to the leadership positions will improve the productivity of the country.
To talk, to learn and develop themselves amidst peers. This was very important, and the Indian Women Network today has gone across the country. I did it for 2 years. I passed the baton on to Nandini, and then many others followed. There's Vanita sitting here as well in this audience. And then CB called me after 2 years. He said, Suchitra, I'm not letting you go. And he said, take it up on the national platform as well. And that's when the entire country was connected by the Indian Women Network. Today the Western region, the Northern region and the Eastern region, all of them follow the templates of the Indian Women Network that was founded off of the Southern region of CII, which I'm extremely proud of. My only question to all of you, my fellow members in CII, how many of you have enrolled your organizations to the Indian Women Network's membership? If you haven't done it, I think it's a big mistake on those of us being leaders. Please, I urge you, I request you all to enroll and get your women in the organization, in your own organizations, to please be a part of this initiative that CII has founded. It's about 12 years plus going now.
Ramesh Thakra.
In 23-24, our GDP will be 293 lakh crores, $3.54 trillion. Our GDP in PPP, purchasing power parity, is $12.2 trillion, 3.6 times nominal GDP. No country in the world has 3.6 times nominal GDP as PPP. China's GDP is $20 trillion, PPP is $33 trillion, United States is 26, both nominal and PPP. PPP is important because it exposes the real size economy. The economy is focused on value based on a standard set of goods and services that you can buy. Our prices are very low, so we don't get counted. And if you look at the composition of our economy today, in 23-24, the primary sector, which is agriculture and mining, is 19%, Secondary is 25%, that is manufacturing and construction. And the service sector is 55%. For the last 3 years, 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, in nominal terms at market prices, the primary sector has grown at 7.24% CAGR, the manufacturing at 8.40%, largely driven by construction, and service at 13.85%. Now if you look at agriculture, we produce 335 million tons of grain, second largest in the world. We produce 250 million tons of milk, largest in the world. 335 million tons of fruits and vegetables, second largest in the world. 4 million tons of spices. And across all areas of agriculture, I think we're doing well. We're number 1 and number 2 in this area. India is the highest arable land in the world. Throughout civilization, we are the highest arable land, right from Peshawar all the way to the Myanmar border. We have 50% of land which is irrigated. Our challenge lies in agriculture that our productivity is maybe 50-60% of what China does. If you are productive like China, we can feed half the world. So there's no problem about agricultural produce. The problem is what are the prices that farmers get, which I will address very shortly. If you look at manufacturing, we're probably among the top 5 manufacturing countries in the world. In 23-24, manufacturing GVA was about 68 lakh crores. 68 lakh crores should be something like $800 billion, including construction. That's pretty big. We've done well. Construction is very big. We every year have about 1.2 or 1.5 billion square feet of space being built. Last quarter, we had 301 billion square feet of residential space being sold. And we are building roads and we are building infrastructure at an unprecedented pace.